Hello everybody, my name is Shortline614 and welcome back to episode 25 of Shortline Space Program, Mun Express, Part 2. So if you didn't see the last episode, which I don't know why you wouldn't have, we are performing our Mun Express mission where we send out a rover and a whole bunch of probes to, explore the Mun and whatnot. And last time we got this to the Mun, we got our Mun Express to the Mun, we landed, I think, 3 small landers. But that's, it isn't just consisting of landers, we also have 2 satellites, 2 orbiters, both going into polar orbits. This first one, which we have just deployed, is a scanning satellite, meant to scan the surface and ore and whatnot, and put it into 150 by 150 kilometer orbit. I'm going to put both of these in 150 by 150 kilometer orbits. And this will allow us to scan for ore, allow us to scan the terrain, and hopefully, eventually, when we come and build a base here, which I'm probably going to call Enterprise Base, we will know where to put it exactly, what's a good spot to put it in, and where there's ore and whatnot. So I go ahead and we begin to scan the surface, and well, there's ore on the Mun everywhere to some degree. It's just a matter of how much ore is there on the Mun. So we get that information, and we go ahead, and it's time to deploy our relay number 6 or 5 or 6. I think this is relay number 5. But I initially name it Mun Relay 1, but then I come back and I rename it Relay number 5 to be in keep the naming scheme. And I go ahead and I put it into a little 150 by 150 kilometer orbit. In reality, do we really need this relay? I don't really think so, but it's still good to have anyways, just in case. Our relays out around Minmus and out around Kerbin should be able to make sure we have continuous contact. But anyways, I switch back to my Nerva tug, and I go ahead and, well, I begin to put into this elliptical orbit in preparation for actually sending this on its way back towards Kerbin, low Kerbin orbit. It's back there now by the time I'm recording this, but I don't think I actually recorded that. But I go ahead and I take our little apparatus and I undock it, and I undock the little lander. And I go ahead and, well, we have no use for this apparatus, and I did put SRBs on it. So how about we crash it into the Mun as a, a little test for the seismometers, or at least I think they're seismometers. Instruments that record stuff crashing into the moon, or like earthquakes or whatnot. They did this with the Apollo lunar module ascent stages when they were done with them, crashing them into the Mun. Or the moon. Crashes somewhere in the southern hemisphere, and well, that's the end of that. So we switch back to our little probe, and I have no idea where I want to land this. I briefly considered landing it near the Apollo 11 memorial, but I actually don't know where that is. I'd have to go looking for it in a sandbox game before I send something out there. We'll eventually send something out there in this save, but I begin to, put this into a relatively low orbit, and then I notice there is a massive canyon, and I realize that I recognize this canyon. I hadn't landed here before, but I remember that Scott Manley had a series a long while ago, like in 2013, called Reusable Space Program, and he built a base near this canyon, and I very specifically remember him trying to, not necessarily jump, but he took a rover and he, the canyon, he tried to, jump off the cliff into the canyon, see if the rover would survive. So I'm like, oh, that's cool. We should build a base here. This is a really interesting spot. Now, I have no idea whether or not that there's a bunch of ore concentration here. I did forget to check that. But, I mean, when you really think about it, do we really need to mine ore here? We had Challenger Station, all the infrastructure out at Minmus for that, and Pathfinder Base. Although Pathfinder, by its name, is just more or less just a test. The real base is going to be here. So I'm confused on whether or not I want to land, and I decide, well, let's just land directly inside the canyon itself. That's the most interesting part. And then I realized, well, this is a really interesting area, like terrain-wise. How about we land the rover here as well? So that's what I eventually end up doing. But it sets down rather smoothly, a lot, well, I guess, certainly a lot smoother than the polar probes, and I name it Manly Canyon in honor of the man himself in Reusable Space Program and all the other stuff too. Go ahead, take pictures. Really nice sunrise on this part of the Mun. But now it is time for the main attraction of Mun Express, which is of course the rover, which is it is a prototype for eventual I guess Moho rover and Duna rovers, but maybe I'll send one of these out to Minmus, who knows. But I put it into this very elliptical orbit when it initially got here. It actually circularized independently of the rest of the craft. So I go ahead and I begin to put it into a relatively low orbit. 11 by 30 kilometers. And this will allow me to orbit the equator and eventually, look for the canyon. So there's a massive crater that leads into the canyon. I initially thought that that was the area that was we were near the Apollo 11 memorial, but I actually think it's on the, I don't know this for certain, but I actually think it's on the other side of the it's on the other like big impact crater on the other side of the Mun. But it is what it is. We can use this to scout out a proper location for our base. Very hilly area. I initially come down kind of, I guess, north of it, you could say. And, or south or north. Somewhere. I think that's north of the canyon. And, well, or south, sorry. And we use I don't know my cardinal directions. But, we use our descent stage in order to slow down. The TWR on this thing isn't all that great, so I kind of, at some points I was a bit concerned about it. And we use it to maneuver to a spot that's almost directly south of where we landed. Of course, on the rim of the canyon, not on top of the canyon. We do end up coming down on a hill and whatnot, and we still have a bunch of Delta V left, but I eventually decided to go ahead and say, well, this ascent stage has sacrificed itself. It needs to be sacrificed because, well, the rover has its own fuel for a reason, and that's mostly so it can land and, like, do hops if it gets stuck or whatnot. So I go ahead, I get it to about 1,000 meters above the surface, and I undock it. We slow down from 4 times speed to 2 times speed. The controls are upside down right now, but that's not a big deal for landing. It crashes. I don't think anything survives. A docking port initially survives, but it eventually dies. And, well, I slowly land our rover ever so gently on the surface. It does come down at a bit of an angle, and we are at a bit of a slope. And, well, but it is landed, and it actually begins to slide ever so slightly down the surface. I know this works on Kerbin, but working on the Mun, it works good enough on the Mun. It's not perfect, but it works good enough. We begin to deploy some of the science, although it's sandbox mode, so the science doesn't mean anything. I forgot to start to scan the surface itself. But before we do that, we do some initial driving tests, and this thing is, it isn't particularly, it's interesting to drive. It likes to slide around a lot, but luckily not as much as, it likes to slide around, but luckily not as much as, say, the Minmus rovers, which just were barely controllable. This is controllable. Like, I can control this rather well. And of course, this is also just a test to see, you know, whether or not this thing is good. Which, I'd give it about a B. But anyways, we go ahead and I fiddle around with some settings to try and make this thing ever so slightly better at handling itself. I think part of the reason why is because the center of mass is ever so slightly towards the front. With rovers, you typically want your, no matter what, you want your center of mass to be balanced. Either that, or you want it to be so heavy that it doesn't particularly matter. With lighter rovers, center of mass balance is really important. But this is not a, this is about a medium-sized rover. It's not big, but it's not small either. So I begin to do some driving tests. We slide around a little bit. It is a bit hard to brake, but as I said, we can get around, and fiddling with some settings, it does get better. If you have any suggestions on how to make this rover actually, like, fiddle around with some settings and how to make it actually good, please put it in the comment section. But this rover, we're going to use this to scout out our base. We might drive to some interesting locations. I think the Apollo 11 Memorial is a bit far away. I don't think there are any anomalies around this area of the Mun, but I'd have to check on that. But anyways, with this slowly slipping and sliding across the lunar surface, I say this, which is, thank you all for watching, and please, tune in for the next episode of Shortline Space Program, which I actually don't know what's going to be in it because I haven't recorded yet. But anyways, thank you for watching, and see y'all in the next one. Goodbye, everybody.